you want to say? I mean, if you could please let a sister know when we are live, I would appreciate it because, hi, YouTube, we're back. I told y'all there was a possibility we might do this again, and the possibility has manifested itself. Here we are live and direct. Welcome back to the Lurie Daniel Favors Show on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Just wanted to, in addition to talking about the history of today, the very significant history of today, want to once again return to this topic of what's taking place with the Texas House Democrats. Shout out to them. Applause, 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 because they are doing the work of alerting the entire nation as to just how serious this is. I know there is a lot of frustration among some of you with the fact that many of the Democrats came back to the state of Texas. Not all of them did. Representative Jolanda Jones and a few others did not come back to Texas because, as they have said, it is now extremely dangerous for those representatives to come back into Texas. They have to be followed by all sorts of police officers. I actually saw a post from Representative, I believe it's Cole, and that's one of the representatives who I think, we have coming on the next couple of days from the state of Texas, and she talked about the fact that in her social media post, she had the officer who was trailing her because they had to, again, sign these freedom papers like enslaved Africans who basically had to get permission to leave the plantation. So she had to sign her freedom paper because, and some of them, and I know some of y'all is like, I don't know why they came back. They're supposed to be representing the people. I just want you to ask yourself, if you had a part-time job where your job was to represent people, but you had a part-time job that paid you less than $10,000 a year, which means you making less than $700 a month, and you have an additional actual job that you get paid for, but your part-time job is to be a state legislator in the state of Texas. I just want you to ask yourself, how long would you be willing to run away from your job? Not run away. That's the wrong framing. How long would you be willing to step away from your job in a form of protest where you know ultimately you are not going to have the capacity or the numbers to stop what's happening, but you can delay it as long as possible? You can alert the rest of the country as to what's happening. How long would you stay away from your family, from your actual job that you use to make money to provide for your family while you are doing your part-time side hustle of being a state representative? How many days would you be able to stay away paying a fine of $500 a day? Because it's a whole lot of people talking real loud, but not saying a whole bunch of nothing, and who got all the words, but who ain't did a damn thing but tweet. Your tweeting warriorship is not necessary in this moment. We need people to actually do something. They are doing something within the confines of their power. I would question, what is it that you are doing within the confines of your power, those of you who are criticizing them for the moves that some of them had to make. However, today, the Texas Republicans are planning to ram through this very extreme racial gerrymandered map, where basically they are stealing seats from black people. They are doing everything they can except counting properly, being equitable, or calling on the name of Jesus, the black or the white version, and doing what they can to ensure that the racism is what will win, not the power, not the actual expression of political power. And the only bill that they're focusing on is a gerrymandering bill. Their flood relief and disaster resilience bill, no, I don't know where that's at. The people, all y'all who live in Kerr County, where your state had abandoned you, where your local representatives, instead of using the $10 billion that the Democrats sent you from the Biden-Harris administration, instead of using that $10 million to actually support your warning system so that you would not be subjected to floods, which you had already been subjected to many times before, instead of investing that $10 million in that program and in the relief that you needed, they gave the money to police officers. They expanded their budget. They expanded their ability to communicate with each other. And I don't know if that was enough communication to help you all get out of the floodwaters that you were in. Obviously, it wasn't, because you lost over 100 of your people, which is a shame. It's a damn shame. But you voted for it, and elections have consequences. But as of this morning, the Republicans, continuing their very bad at leadership reality with very sucky policies, basically made the Democrats and the Republicans, brought them back, were able to establish quorum, and now they're debating these racist maps. And this is frankly how Republicans move, because again, they are bad at leading. Their policies suck. They don't mind if you freeze Texas. They don't mind if you drown Texas. They don't mind if you heat exhaust your way all the way to death's door. They just want to keep power, and that is the thing that racist power leaders always do. I will repeat this ad nauseum, because as I heard, who was it? Drew McCaskill, who said, repetition don't hurt the prayer. I'm going to repeat this stuff as much as possible. So Texans, once again, they get you all hyped up on things that don't actually have any real impact on your life. Again, like pronouns. They get you to ignore the fact that your electrical grid cannot handle it. They get you to focus on, again, those 10 trans athletes who are in college who you actually have never seen compete in any real way outside of the algorithmically driven clips that are sent to you, and you forget often that you are a welfare state. You forget often that you cannot meet your own needs. You get so focused on trans kids who, again, you don't actually know in real life, that you forget the fact that Republican policies are so terrible that you now do not make enough money to support yourself as a state. You are a recipient state. You are a welfare queen state, and you depend on states like California. You depend on states like New York to provide your needs for yourself. And again, this is why Yahoo Finance has reported today that both you, Texas, and the state of Florida are now among the most economically distressed states. Your housing market is in a shambles. Both of you can barely hold on to the insurance policies and programs that you need to make housing purchases and sales a thing. And frankly, it's a real shame that you all have allowed yourself to be played like this, but it is very much in line with what your ancestors, your white ancestors, have instructed you to do. And that's a generational curse that you all are going to have to figure out on your own. But as of this morning, Representative Nicole Collier was still locked at the Capitol. There was a black woman this morning still locked at the Capitol. And so I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is Legally Hype, who was explaining what was happening and the nature of what's going on right now. And you need to be aware of this, because if you are in any other state, either Republican or Democrat, know that this is now coming to your state. It is not going to stop with Texas. The other Republican states are going to attempt this gerrymandering. And to the League of Women Voters and their defenders, who said that, Lurie, you're being very harsh on the League of Women Voters, and it's because the League of Women Voters recognizes that the Republicans might be able to jerry-rig the math in ways that are going to be very harmful. They're already doing that. Republican states are not planning to racistly steal seats from black elected officials and other non-white elected officials in response to what Gavin Newsom said. They're doing it because Donald Trump put a battery in their back and told them to. But I want you all to pay attention to what Legally Hype is talking about in this clip, because she's explaining what has happened with Nicole Collier. Now, even though they are back in session today, the reality is, just the same way that racist redistricting maps are going to travel to other states, efforts to jail Democrats, particularly the black women Democrats, efforts to jail them, efforts to politically harass them, efforts to weaponize the police state against them will also spread. And so Democrats, get ready. I know this is not probably what you planned for when you were running for election. When you got into office, you did not realize that we were going to have a Project 2025 America that was seeking to reestablish Jim Crow, but that is exactly where we're at. Pay attention to what Legally Hype says in this clip. Amina, are we sharing? Yes, we're sharing. All right, y'all, take a listen.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out why it ain't 40 corn-fed Texas riding black horses with AKs and rifles on their way to the house to go pick up Nicole right now, because there's no legal authority to keep her there. So apparently the House is using House Rule 5, Section 8 to say that Nicole Collier has to stay in the House chambers until she either A, signs a permission slip saying, I'm going to let the police follow me everywhere to make sure I come back on Wednesday, even though if I decide I don't want to come back on Wednesday to break a quorum, then I have the right to do that. Or B, she got to stay there till Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. when they supposed to pull up and do their thing. The civil arrest warrants, keyword civil arrest warrants, that were issued on the House Democrats when they left have expired because that special session expired. And we know that special session expired because the Democrats weren't going to come back. They weren't going to come back. And Governor Abbott was very clear about, y'all don't come back when this one expired. I'm going to just do a new one. And nobody cared. Actually, this is a bully tactic by the Republicans, and they think that we for play, because look at the permission slips that they having these people sign. And for those of y'all that are still waiting for the proverbial red line to be crossed before you decide to wake the fuck up and get active with the rest of us, let me be clear that during the Jim Crow era, there weren't necessarily certain laws in place or on the books per se, but racist white people used tactics like fear, violence, bullying, shit they doing right now to keep black people in their place so that they can maintain power for as long as possible. They're doing it again. I don't know if y'all got no Texas Cowboys on no shit, but go get Nicole. Go pick her up.
I don't know if it was when Abe Lincoln was around. I don't really remember. But I remember somebody telling me a story of people climbing out of the windows. So I say, if y'all got ladders, go help your girl out. Get her out of there. Get her out of there. No, seriously, I'm actually kind of dead ass. I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is absolutely insane. If they gonna act crazy, we can too. Especially since she's not acting crazy to harm people. She's doing her part to actually help people.
Well, that's the reality that we find ourselves in. So we now need to be preparing differently. right? Because they've said that they want Project 2025 America. They said that they don't want us to have no more rights. They said that they're going to get rid of the social safety net so that they do worse to us than Reaganomics did to us. They said that when you are in a position of power doing what you're supposed to do in the tradition of black elected officials who came before you coming out of the Reconstruction era, who they got beaten on the House floor, right? There's a line that Michael Harriot quotes that he was looking at when he was on this show a couple of years ago. He talked about the fact that there is a line in the history books that talk about when black elected officials were being elected into public office after the Civil War during Reconstruction. Once white elected officials pulled a Greg Abbott, because Greg Abbott ain't original. Once white elected officials began doing what the white elected officials today are trying to do, their version in the 1800s ended with the floor slick with blood. That was the quote. Marcus Garvey says what Africans have done, Africans can do. And what we're crystal clear about right now is that that is not just true for us. It is also true for them. And so if they are having their Jim Crow mind, their Jim Crow hat on right now, they have their white nationalists go to a lynching after church hats on right now. Which hats we wearing? What we doing? And by the way, not to start nothing. I don't want to start nothing. But as Legally Hype said, where are the corn-fed bruhs? Where the brothers at? Where the ones who be on the ones who are the Second Amendment aficionados? The ones who say things like, I couldn't be no slave, son. Or the ones who things like, ain't nobody gonna send no ice to my hood. They scared of the ninjas. Where they at? Because they was very quiet. Where are all the Alphabet Gang internet soldiers who told us that we were fear-mongering when we said this is exactly what Project 2025 had in store? You know what? They might be at boot camp. They might be at the no reparations, no vote boot camp. That's where they at. Maybe they're training for that. They're probably training for the revolution. Damn it, I'm so silly. They are probably training for the revolution which won't be televised, nor will the revolution be fed to them on some bot-driven algorithm, so they probably gonna miss notice of the revolution announcement anyway. Moving on, we also want to talk about what's happening economically, because as I've been saying all day today, Republicans are bad at leadership, their policies suck, and they lead to very poor outcomes for most people in the country. And what we now know is that U.S. bankruptcies, corporate bankruptcies, surging past the 2020 pandemic levels. Data from the S&P 500 Global shows that just this summer, corporate U.S. bankruptcy filings went to their highest levels since 2020. There were 71 public and private companies that filed for bankruptcy last month, which is an increase from June, which was an increase from before. And in June, they had 63 bankruptcies. Now, despite the fact that there is a strong stock market, we got 3% technical economic growth right here. And according to the Business Insider, that has not really stopped the harm that is happening at the corporate level. And according to the S&P Global, quote, companies are contending with elevated interest rates as uncertainty from U.S. tariff policy pressures costs and supply chain resilience. I'm sorry. Did that mean that y'all's orange president, Mango Mussolini, did that mean his policies don't work? I think that means his policies don't work. Does that mean that many of the corporations who gave money to Donald J. Trump and the Trump administration, does that mean that their policies don't work? I think their policies don't work. And that means that a lot of y'all is going to go broke. Not y'all as individuals. We already knew individuals was going to go broke. But the corporations. The corporations are also going to go broke. And it's a shame because they're going to lose out on so very much. Now, I thought we might have an appearance from the Fragile Whytes. We do have an appearance from the Fragile Whytes in the podcast, but it looks as though the Fragile Whyte podcast or the Fragile Whyte breaking news story may not make its way into our time because we have to get ready to go. But I do feel as though, I'm sorry. Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. Is that you, Colin? Mr. Colin Iser, is that you? Are you back? Yes. Okay. Actually, just really quickly, Colin Iser, our reporter from Discovering Truth Channel News, he is back. He has an update on something very similar that's happening in Fragile Whitelandia on Planet Humanity. That feels very much like what Donald Trump was experiencing when earlier today I talked about the fact that he is scared of the museums. He's scared of history. He's scared of reading things. And so this is why what's happening on Fragile Whitelandia is also very important. Colin Iser, can you hear me? Oh, yes, Miss Daniel Favors. 'Tis I, Colin Iser, reporter from the Discovering Truth Channel, coming to you once again with our latest analysis about some of the latest moves in Fragile Whitelandia. Oh, okay, now, Colin Iser, Just a moment. We just have to remind the people, for those of you who are new to the Fragile White community, this is a community that we have discovered here on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show, the Discovering Truth channel segment. And basically, the Fragile Whites live a life that seems very instructive for some of the neighbors that we have here on this planet. Now, the Fragile Whites are not on this planet. They're not on planet Earth. No, they are on planet humanity. And they live in a space called Fragile Whitelandia. And so we learn a lot about them because they have this weird parallel with another community that's based here in these United States and on planet Earth. Colonizer, can you hear me? Yes, Miss Daniel Favors, Colonizer here. It appears as though the president of the Fragile Whites has taken a very defensive position. It appears as though the Fragile Whites are once again feeling threatened by the presence of education and museums. Well, now, Colin, the challenge that we have in here is that our president here in this United States, he is now closing down museums. They are very upset. They're going through all the museums. They're going to purge them of information. They're going to get rid of books. They're very scared about anything that's considered woke. And woke is their weird European American term for being learned, for knowing things. Oh, yes, Miss Daniel Favors, I, Colonizer here, know exactly what it is that you mean, because the Fragile Whites have a very similar approach, as I have told you before. The Fragile Whites simply cannot tolerate learning anything that contrasts with their self-defensive mechanism, and that self-defense mechanism is called denial. Fragile Whites are the only beings on planet humanity who live in a world purely of make-believe. Their entire existence is predicated on engaging in some of the worst behaviors of any group on the planet. They truly have a very troublesome recent history, and they're the only group on the planet humanity who don't know how to get along with others. They don't know how to grow anything, and everything that they build is designed in some way to destroy the very planet on which they coexist. And every group of strangers that the Fragile Whites encounter greets them with kindness, that the Fragile Whites repay with violence, theft, and enslavement or colonization. Okay, now, Colin, we already know this. It sounds very much like some of the people that we live with here. What is this breaking news that you seem to have this morning? What's happening? Well, Miss Daniel Favors, it appears that we now know that the Fragile Whites are such nervous Nellies that they too have had to close their museums. They too have shut down entire school systems that teach the truth because they don't like to be woke. I'm sorry, Colin, did you say woke? We got woke here. It's people who are afraid of knowing things down here. Is that the same thing that they call it in Fragile Whitelandia? Why, yes, Miss Daniel Favors. 'Tis true. 'Tis true. The Fragile Whites, like some of your residents of your own planet, have an utter fear of learning anything that would contradict the lies and mythology that they tell themselves. And this is why, Miss Daniel Favors, that scholars like Dante King describe them as psychopaths whose psychopathy makes them simultaneously utterly uneducated, utterly developed, underdeveloped, and leaves them walking around with an under-realized central nervous system that makes them more dangerous than a wounded wildebeest in the wild. Well then, Colin, what's the rest of the planet doing? Like, how are they defending themselves against, like, what the Fragile Whites are unleashing? It sounds terrible up there, almost as bad as what we got going on down here. Well, Miss Daniel Favors, this bit of news might be of interest to you because the Fragile Whites have learned that when their neighbors learn the things that they, the Fragile Whites, refuse to learn, it is the ultimate antidote. Truly, the only way to defend yourselves on planet Earth is to know all the things. To study all the things. Knowledge. All the things. Read, study, learn, grow. Read some more, study some more, learn some more, and grow. That is the only way that on Fragile Whitelandia, they gonna get defeated. And apparently it's the only way we're gonna defeat these asshats who are down here on planet Earth as well. So what we now know from our dear friend, Mr. Colin Iser, is that we have to teach ourselves the truth, especially the uncomfortable parts, because true healing from the injuries caused by the ravenous Fragile Whites, or the version of them that we deal with here, is found in knowing things. And that's why y'all woke, you're unwoke. Orange Mussolini president is determined to destroy the museums. And we have to remember that the knowledge of our and our history is not in a museum. It's within us. And it's on us to make sure that our people know exactly what is going on and exactly how we got here. And that means we have to teach ourselves our own history. We have to go to commercial break. I want to thank all of you in the YouTube community who hang out with us. And also, please like, subscribe, and share the videos. Please become a member. I'm going to start doing membership videos soon. Urban View, that is for you as well. We got a lot to get to. Amina, take us to that 30-second break if you could. Urban View, much more to come. We will be right back.